The War Museum of the Empire was the largest building on the planet. It stood like a mountain of black stone in the center of the capital city. Inside its walls were thousands of trophies taken from conquered worlds. Weapons, armor, flags, and bones filled every room. They had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, and they kept proof of every victory. Queen walked through the museum slowly. Her 4 purple eyes moved from display to display. She was tall, even for a. Her skin was dark blue, and her claws clicked against the stone floor with each step. Behind her walked 3 advisors, all nervous and quiet. The Queen visited this museum once every cycle. She liked to remind herself of her empire's power. She liked to see the remains of those who had tried to fight against her people. It made her feel safe. It made her feel strong. But today, something was different. Stopped walking, her eyes fixed on a display case she had never noticed before. Inside the case stood a suit of armor. It was not beautiful. It was not impressive. It looked like something a child might make from scrap metal. The armor was gray and dull. Deep cuts covered its surface. Burn marks blackened the chest plate. One arm piece was missing completely. The helmet had a crack running from the top to the bottom, so deep that could see the padding inside. She stepped closer. Her breath fogged the glass. "What is this?" she asked. Her advisors hurried forward. The oldest one, a male named, looked at the information card beside the display. His face went pale. "It is human armor, Your Majesty," he said quietly. His eyes narrowed. "Human, the young species from the Sol system." "Yes, Your Majesty." The Queen knew about humans. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them now. They had appeared on the galactic stage only 50 years ago. They were small, weak, and short-lived. They died after only 80 or 90 cycles. They had no claws, no venom, no natural weapons of any kind. Their bodies broke easily. Most empires ignored them. They had ignored them too. Why worry about creatures so fragile? But had heard whispers, strange stories from the edge of known space, stories about humans doing impossible things. She had dismissed them as lies. Now she stared at this armor and felt something cold in her chest. "Whose armor is this?" she demanded. Checked the records on his data pad. His hands were shaking. It belonged to a human soldier named. He wore it during the siege of Orion 32 years ago. Remembered Orion? It was a small colony world near the border of territory. There were monsters. They traveled in swarms of millions. They ate everything in their path, even the feared them. "The siege of Orion," repeated slowly. "They attacked that world, did they not?" "Yes, Your Majesty. A swarm of over 200,000 descended on the planet. The human colony had only 3,000 soldiers to defend it. And this armor survived that battle." Swallowed hard. "This armor did more than survive, Your Majesty. The human who wore it." He held the northern gate of the city alone for 9 hours. Did not move. She did not blink. For a long moment she simply stared at her advisor. "Alone," she said finally, "one human against the—" "Yes, Your Majesty." "For 9 hours." "Yes." The Queen turned back to the armor. She pressed her clawed hand against the glass. The cold spread through her fingers. She studied every cut, every burn, every dent in the metal. Each mark told a story of violence. Each scar proved that something impossible had happened. "Tell me everything," she commanded. Pulled up the full report. His voice trembled as he read. The fleet arrived without warning. The human military began evacuation immediately, but their transport ships could only carry so many people at a time. They needed 9 hours to complete the evacuation, but they were already landing. They would reach the city in less than 1 hour. Listened without interruption. The northern gate was the weakest point in the city's defenses. If they broke through there, they would reach the evacuation zone. Thousands of civilians would die. Someone needed to hold that gate. And this human volunteered, guessed. Yes, Your Majesty, was a sergeant in the Colonial Defense Force. He volunteered to stay behind while his squad protected the evacuation zone. The Queen circled the display case slowly. Her claws left marks on the stone floor. Why, she asked, why would he do this? He must have known he would die. Hesitated. The records say his younger sister was on the last transport ship. Her name was, she was a teacher at the colony school. Something shifted in his chest. She did not understand the feeling. He stayed to save his sister. Yes, Your Majesty. The Queen stopped circling. She stood in front of the armor and stared into the cracked helmet. She tried to imagine the face that had once been inside. She tried to imagine what kind of creature would choose certain death for one family member. They did not think this way. They calculated odds. They measured risks and rewards. They did not sacrifice themselves for single individuals. It was inefficient. It was illogical. But humans were different. Reached out and touched the glass again. How many did he kill? Checked the records. His voice was barely a whisper when he answered. According to the after-battle count, 847. The Queen's hand fell away from the glass. Her 4 eyes went wide. 847. One human, in 9 hours, against creatures that had destroyed entire civilizations. That is not possible, she said. The evidence is clear, Your Majesty. Surveillance footage survived the battle. Body counts were confirmed by 3 separate teams. The numbers are accurate. Looked at the armor again. She looked at its simple design, its primitive materials, its complete lack of energy shields or advanced technology. It was just metal and ceramic. It was just human engineering. And yet, I want to see the footage, she commanded. Bode, of course, Your Majesty. I will prepare a viewing room immediately. The advisors hurried away to make arrangements, stayed behind, alone with the armor. The museum was quiet. Only the soft hum of the climate systems broke the silence. She had conquered 1,200 species. She had destroyed worlds and ended civilizations. She had never felt fear. But now, looking at this broken suit of human armor, Queen felt something very close to it. The humans were not just fragile creatures from a small planet. They were something else entirely. They were something her empire had never faced before. And she needed to understand them. She needed to understand what made a man stand alone against monsters. She needed to understand what kind of love could make death seem acceptable. She needed to understand why this primitive armor, hanging in her victory museum, felt less like a trophy and more like a warning. The Queen turned and walked toward the viewing room. Behind her, the armor stood silent in its case, waiting for its story to be told. Was born on a small farm on the colony world called New. His parents had left Earth when he was 3 years old. They wanted a new life, a fresh start on a world where the air was clean and the land was endless. The farm was not easy work. The soil on New was different from Earth soil. Crops did not grow the same way. His father worked from sunrise to sunset, trying to make things grow. His mother worked beside him, never complaining, never resting. Learned to work hard from them. He learned that nothing good came without struggle. He learned that family was the most important thing in the universe. His sister was born when was 7 years old. She was small and loud and cried through the night. Did not mind. He loved her from the first moment he saw her face. He promised himself that he would always protect her. As the years passed, grew tall and strong. He helped his father in the fields. He fixed machines when they broke. He built fences and dug wells and did everything the farm needed, but he always made time for her. He walked her to school every morning. He helped her with her homework every night. When other children were mean to her, he taught her how to stand up for herself. When she was sad, he told her jokes until she laughed. Grew up to be smart and kind. She became a teacher at the colony school just like she always wanted, was proud of her. He was proud that she had found her place in the world. Found his own place too. At 22 years old, he joined the Colonial Defense Force. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of alien empires and unknown threats. Someone had to protect the colony. Someone had to keep the people safe. His training was hard. The instructors pushed the recruits until they could not stand. They ran for hours in the hot sun. They practiced fighting until their hands bled. They learned to shoot, to fight, to survive. Was not the best soldier in his class. He was not the fastest or the strongest, but he never gave up. He never stopped trying. His instructors respected him for that. He became a sergeant after 5 years of service. He led a small squad of 10 soldiers. They were good people, loyal and brave, treated them like family. Life on Nu was peaceful for many years. The colony grew larger. More people arrived from Earth. The farms produced more food. Children played in the streets without fear. Then the first warning came at midnight. Was sleeping in the barracks when the alarm started screaming. He jumped out of bed and grabbed his rifle. His squad was already running to their stations. The sky above the colony was full of ships, hundreds of them blocking out the stars. They were not like any ships had seen before. They looked like insects, black and sharp and horrible. Captain gathered all the soldiers in the command center. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. "They have found us," she said. "A swarm of over 200,000 is landing on the planet. We have 3,000 soldiers to defend the colony." The room went silent. Everyone knew about They were the nightmare of the galaxy. They did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They only killed and ate and moved on to the next world. "We cannot win this fight," continued. "Our only chance is evacuation. Transport ships are on their way. They will arrive in waves over the next 9 hours. We need to hold the city until all civilians are evacuated." She pulled up a map of the city on the main screen. 4 gates led into the settlement. They would attack from all directions. "The northern gate is our weakest point," said. "The walls there are thin. If they break through, they will reach the evacuation zone in minutes. I need volunteers to hold that position." Looked at the map. He looked at the northern gate. He thought about. She lived near the evacuation zone. She would be helping with the children, keeping them calm, getting them onto the ships. He raised his hand. "I will hold the northern gate," he said. Looked at him. Her eyes were sad but understanding. "Sergeant, that position cannot be held by one man. I need a full squad there." "No," said firmly. "We need every soldier protecting the evacuation zone. I can hold the gate alone." The other soldiers started arguing. Some volunteered to go with him. Others said he was crazy. The noise filled the command center. Raised his voice above the chaos. "Listen to me," he shouted. "My sister is on the last transport. It leaves in 9 hours. I am not leaving until she is safe in space. I do not need anyone else to die for this." Walked toward him. She put her hand on his shoulder. "You understand what you are asking for," she said quietly. "You understand that you will not survive." Nodded. "I understand." "They will send hundreds at that gate, maybe thousands. Then I will kill hundreds, maybe thousands." Studied his face for a long moment. She saw no fear there. She saw no doubt. She saw only the calm certainty of a man who had made peace with death. "Your squad will stay at the evacuation zone," she said finally. "They will protect the civilians until the last ship leaves. This is your final order to them." Turned to his squad. These 10 soldiers had followed him for years. They had trained together, fought together, laughed together. Now they were looking at him with tears in their eyes. "You heard the captain said. Protect the evacuation zone. Get everyone onto those ships. Do not come to the northern gate. Do not try to save me. That is an order." His second in command, a young woman named, stepped forward. "Sergeant, please, let us come with you." Smiled at her. "You are a good soldier. You will be a great leader one day, but this fight is mine. My sister needs to live. That is all that matters." He walked to the weapons locker and began gathering supplies. Rifle, pistol, combat knife, grenades, as much ammunition as he could carry. He put on his armor piece by piece, checking each seal, tightening each strap. The armor was standard military issue. Gray metal plates over a black bodysuit. No energy shields. No fancy technology. Just steel and ceramic and human engineering. It would have to be enough. When was ready, he walked to the door of the command center. Everyone watched him in silence. No one knew what to say. There were no words for a moment like this. Stopped at the door and looked back one last time. "Tell I love her," he said. "Tell her to live a good life. Tell her to be happy." Then he walked out into the night. The ships were closer now. Could see them landing in the hills outside the city. Thousands of dark shapes were pouring out of them, forming into groups, beginning to move toward the walls. He walked through the empty streets toward the northern gate. The civilians were all gathering at the evacuation zone. The city felt like a ghost town. When he reached the gate, climbed up onto the wall, he looked out at the dark hills beyond. They were coming. He could hear them now, a distant sound like thunder that never stopped. He checked his rifle one more time. He said a quiet prayer. He thought about his parents, his sister, his squad. The first light of dawn appeared on the horizon. The first appeared with it. Raised his rifle and took aim. "Come on then," he whispered. "Let us see how many of you I can take with me." The first wave came running across the open ground like a flood of darkness. They moved on 4 legs, their bodies low to the ground, their claws tearing up dirt and rock. Each one was the size of a large dog, covered in black armor plates that grew from their skin. Their mouths were full of teeth as long as human fingers. Counted 20 in the first wave. He took a breath, he aimed, he fired. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. The first fell, its head exploding in a spray of green blood, shifted his aim, fired again. Another fell, and another. By the time the wave reached the gate, only 3 remained. They tried to climb the wall, shot them before they made it halfway. He checked his ammunition counter, still plenty left. He reloaded anyway. The second wave came 5 minutes later. This time there were 50. They came faster, learning from the first attack. Some ran in zigzag patterns. Others used the bodies of the fallen as shields. Kept shooting. His hands moved automatically. Aim, fire, shift. Aim, fire, shift. He had done this 1,000 times in training. Now he did it for real. The second wave fell like the first. But this time, 10 reached the wall. Their claws dug into the stone, pulled out his pistol and shot them one by one. The last one almost reached the top before his bullet found its brain. The sun rose higher. The heat grew stronger. Sweat ran down his face inside his helmet. He wiped it away and kept watching the hills. The third wave came with 100. The fourth wave had 200. Each wave was larger than the last. Each wave came faster. His rifle overheated after the 5th wave. He threw it aside and grabbed the backup weapon from his belt. It was smaller, weaker, but it still killed. He kept firing. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. The ground in front of the gate became covered with bodies. The smell of blood and burned flesh filled the air. Tried not to breathe too deeply. His communication device crackled. Captain's voice came through, broken by static. "Sergeant, report. What is your status?" Ducked behind the wall to reload. "Still alive, still holding. How much longer?" 4 more hours until the last transport. The first 3 ships have already left. 4 more hours. Looked at his remaining ammunition. It would be close, very close. "Understood," he said. "Keep those transports moving." "Sergeant, we can see the northern gate on the surveillance feed. We can see what you are doing." Did not answer. "You have killed over 300, alone. The command staff cannot believe what they are seeing." laughed though it hurt his chest. "Tell them to keep watching. I am just getting started." He ended the call and stood back up. Another wave was coming. The middle hours were the hardest. Lost track of how many waves he had fought. His backup weapon ran out of ammunition. He switched to grenades, throwing them into groups of and watching them scatter in explosions of fire and flesh. When the grenades were gone, he used his combat knife. They came over the wall now. Some of them made it to the top before could stop them. He fought them hand to hand, his knife cutting through their armor, his fists breaking their teeth. They bit him, clawed him, tried to drag him down. He killed them all. His armor was falling apart. The left arm piece was torn away completely during the 6th hour. 3 had grabbed it and pulled until the straps broke, had killed them with his bare hand while they were still holding the metal. Blood ran down his arm. Some of it was green blood. Some of it was his own red human blood. He did not stop to check which was which. The sun began to set. The sky turned orange and red, stood on the wall, surrounded by dead, waiting for the next wave. For a few minutes, nothing came. The silence was strange after so many hours of noise. Then saw something moving in the hills, something bigger than the others. A commander rose from the ground. It stood on 2 legs instead of 4. It was 3 meters tall, twice the height of a human. Its arms ended in blades instead of claws. Its eyes glowed red in the fading light. The commander walked toward the gate alone. The smaller fell back, giving it room. Even they feared it. Gripped his broken knife. The blade was chipped and dull from hours of fighting. It would have to be enough. The commander stopped at the base of the wall. It looked up at. When it spoke, its voice came through a translator device on its chest. The words were cold and mechanical. "You are one human. You are dying. Your wounds are many. Your weapons are gone. Why do you not run?" Stared down at the monster. His body was shaking from exhaustion. His vision was blurring from blood loss. But his voice was steady when he answered. "My people are still evacuating, so I am still fighting." The commander tilted its head. "This is not logical. You cannot win. You will die here." "Probably," agreed. "But I will take as many of you with me as I can." "For what purpose? Your death serves nothing." He thought about her smile, her laugh, the way she always helped her students even when she was tired. He thought about the children on those transport ships, flying toward safety while he stood here bleeding. "You would not understand," he said. "You only know how to destroy. You do not know how to love." The commander did not respond. It simply raised its blade arm and charged. Jumped down from the wall to meet it. His knife met the commander's blade with a crash of metal. The force nearly broke his arm. He did not care. He kept fighting. They moved across the ground like dancers, trading blows, dodging strikes. The commander was stronger, faster, better armed, but refused to fall. Every time the monster knocked him down, he got back up. Every time its blade cut his flesh, he kept fighting. The smaller watched in silence. They had never seen anything like this. Their hive mind buzzed with confusion. How could this creature, so weak and broken, continue to resist? The commander's blade finally found his chest. It punched through his armor, through his ribs, and came out his back. Grabbed the blade with both hands to stop it from going deeper. "Now you die," the commander said. Smiled, blood dripped from his lips. "Yes," he whispered, "but so do you." He pulled himself forward along the blade, driving it deeper into his own body. The commander tried to pull away, but was too close. He raised his broken knife and drove it into the monster's eye. The commander screamed. Its body shook. Then it fell backward dead with still hanging from its blade. For a long moment nothing moved. They stared at the scene in silence. Their commander was dead. The human was dying. The sun had set. The stars were coming out. Then the sound of engines filled the sky. Looked up and saw transport ships rising from the city behind him. One after another, They lifted into the air and disappeared into the darkness. The last one was just leaving. Was safe. Closed his eyes and let himself fall. When the relief forces arrived an hour later, they found him lying among the bodies of the dead. Over 800 surrounded him. The commander lay nearby, knife still in its eye. They thought he was dead at first, but when they checked his pulse, they found something impossible. He was still alive. Just barely, but alive. They rushed him to the medical ships. The doctors said it was a miracle. No human should have survived those wounds, but somehow, against all odds, his heart kept beating. Behind him, the northern gate still stood, battered and burned, covered in blood and bodies, but unbroken. Just like the man who had defended it. The viewing room was dark except for the light from the screen. Queen sat alone in the center, her 4 eyes fixed on the images playing before her. Her advisors stood in the shadows behind her, afraid to speak, afraid to move. The footage was old and damaged in places. Static lines crossed the screen. The colors were faded, but the images were clear enough to understand. Watched a human soldier climb up onto a wall. She watched him raise his rifle. She watched the first wave of cum running across the ground like a black flood. And she watched him kill them all. The footage continued for hours. The Queen did not pause it. She did not look away. She watched every moment, every battle, every impossible thing this human did. She watched him switch weapons when his rifle failed. She watched him throw grenades with perfect aim. She watched him fight with a knife when the grenades were gone. She watched him fight with his bare hands when the knife was broken. She watched the commander approach. She watched their conversation. She heard the human's answer to the monster's question. My people are still evacuating, so I am still fighting. Something twisted in his chest. She did not understand the feeling. The battle between the human and the commander was short and brutal. Watched the blade go through the human's chest. She watched him pull himself forward along the metal, driving it deeper into his own body so he could reach his enemy. She watched him kill the commander and fall. The screen went dark. The footage was over. For a long time, Queen did not speak. The silence in the viewing room was heavy enough to crush stone. Finally, she stood up. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were shaking. She had never felt this way before. He survived, she said quietly. It was not a question. Stepped forward from the shadows. Yes, Your Majesty, barely. He spent 2 years in recovery. The doctors had to rebuild most of his internal organs. And then he returned to Nu. He married a woman named Sara and had 3 children. He lived as a farmer like his parents before him. He died peacefully at the age of 81, surrounded by his family. Turned to face her advisors. Her purple eyes were wide and strange. He went back to farming, she repeated slowly. After all of that, he went back to farming. Yes, Your Majesty. The Queen walked to the wall and pressed her palm against the cold stone. She needed something solid to hold onto. Her mind was spinning with thoughts she could not organize. We have conquered 1,200 species, she said. We have fought wars across the galaxy for 10,000 years. We have faced every kind of enemy that exists. Her advisors waited in nervous silence. Not one of them, continued, has ever done what this human did. Not one species has ever produced a soldier who would stand alone against the. Not one individual has ever pulled a blade through his own body just to reach his enemy's heart. She turned back to face them. Her expression was something none of them had ever seen on her face before. What are these creatures? She demanded. Swallowed hard. They are humans, Your Majesty, from the planet Earth, they are. I know what they are called, interrupted. I am asking what they are. What makes them do these things? What drives them to fight when all logic says they should run? Another advisor stepped forward. Her name was, and she was the Empire's chief scientist. She had studied humans for many years. "Your Majesty, if I may," she said carefully, "humans are unusual among galactic species. Their bodies are weak. They have no natural weapons. They live for less than a century. By every measure, they should be prey. And yet they are not. They have something we do not understand, something that makes them dangerous in ways our equations cannot predict." Walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. "Explain." Pulled up information on her data pad. "Humans form bonds with each other that go beyond logic. They call it love. They will die for their families. They will sacrifice themselves for strangers. They will fight against impossible odds because something behind them matters more than their own survival." "That is inefficient," said automatically. "That is irrational." "Yes, Your Majesty, it is, but it is also effective." The Queen thought about the footage she had just watched. She thought about the human's answer to the commander. She thought about the way he had looked at the stars as the transport ships flew overhead. He had not been afraid. He had been happy. He had been dying, bleeding, broken in every way a creature could be broken, and he had been happy because his sister was safe. Did not understand love. They did not experience it the same way humans did. They formed alliances and mating partnerships based on mutual benefit. They served the empire because it was logical. They fought because victory brought power. But humans fought for each other. They died for each other. They did things that made no sense because they cared about individuals more than they cared about themselves. It was terrifying. "Our generals have advised caution regarding Earth," said slowly. "I thought they were being cowards. I thought humans were too weak to matter." Shook her head. "The generals are wise, Your Majesty. Weapons can be matched. Technology can be stolen. But what the humans have, it cannot be replicated. It cannot be defeated by force alone." Stood up again. She walked to the door of the viewing room and stopped with her hand on the frame. "Remove the armor from the conquest hall," she commanded. Her advisors looked confused. "Your Majesty." "That armor does not belong there. It is not a trophy. It is not proof of our power. It is proof of theirs." She looked back over her shoulder at the dark screen where the footage had played. "Move it to the central hall of the museum. Put it next to the artifacts of the founders. Put it where everyone can see it. And create a new plaque for the display." Fumbled with his data pad. "What should the plaque say, Your Majesty?" Thought for a long moment. She thought about the soldier who had stood alone against monsters. She thought about the love that had driven him to do the impossible. She thought about what his armor really represented. It should say, "Here stands the armor of human soldier who taught an empire that courage has no species." She walked out of the viewing room without another word. Behind her, her advisors looked at each other in shock. The Queen had just done something unprecedented. She had honored an enemy. She had admitted that another species had something that did not. But did not care about tradition. She did not care about pride. She cared about the survival of her empire, and she had just learned something important. The humans were not prey. They were not weak. They were not something to be ignored. They were a force of nature, and her empire needed to understand them before it was too late. As she walked through the empty corridors of the museum, thought about his face in the footage. She thought about his smile as he fell. She thought about his final words to the commander. "You only know how to destroy. You do not know how to love." Perhaps, she thought, it was time for her empire to learn. 30 years passed. The armor stood in the central hall of the museum, next to the most sacred artifacts of their civilization. Every day, thousands of walked past it. They stopped to read the plaque. They stared at the battered metal, the deep cuts, the burn marks that told a story of impossible courage. Many of them had never seen a human before, but they all knew this armor. They all knew the legend. The galaxy had changed in those 30 years. Humans had spread across the stars, building colonies, making alliances, exploring the unknown. They were still weak by galactic standards. They still died after only a century. They still had no claws or venom or natural weapons. But everyone respected them now. Everyone knew what they were capable of. Queen had grown old. Her blue skin had faded to gray. Her 4 eyes had grown dim. But she still visited the museum once every cycle. She still stood before the armor and remembered the footage she had watched so many years ago. Today was special. Today she was not alone. A delegation from Earth had arrived on to discuss trade agreements and diplomatic partnerships. It was the first time humans had visited the event was historic. Had insisted on one thing. Before any meetings began, the human delegation would see the museum. The group walked through the ancient halls, surrounded by artifacts from 1,000 conquered worlds. The humans looked at everything with curious eyes. They did not seem afraid. They did not seem impressed by the trophies of power. They simply looked and thought and kept walking. When they reached the central hall, stopped. The humans stopped with her. Before them stood the armor lit by soft white light from above. No one spoke. The leader of the human delegation was a diplomat named Park Minyu. He was tall and thin, with gray hair and kind eyes. He stared at the armor for a long time without moving. "You kept it," he finally said. "We did," replied. "It is one of our most precious artifacts." Minyu stepped closer to the display case. He read the plaque slowly, his lips moving as he formed the words. "Here stands the armor of human soldier, who taught an empire that courage has no species." He looked at the queen with surprise in his eyes. "You wrote this?" "I did, 30 years ago, after I watched the footage of his battle." Minyu was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "My grandmother knew him. She grew up on Nu. She was one of the children on the last transport ship." Felt something shift in her chest, the same strange feeling she had experienced 30 years ago. "Then your grandmother owes him her life." "She does, we all do. Everyone who came from that colony, everyone who was born because those people survived." He turned back to the armor. The other humans in the delegation had gathered around, looking at the ancient metal with new understanding. "He was just a farmer's son," Minyu said softly. "He was nobody special, he just loved his sister." "That love made him extraordinary," replied. "That love made him unstoppable." A young woman pushed through the group to stand at the front. She was small, with dark hair and bright eyes. Tears were streaming down her face. Studied her carefully. "You are moved by this display, young one." The woman nodded. Her voice shook when she answered. "He was my great-grandfather." The hall went silent. Every human turned to look at her. The queen's 4 eyes went wide. "You are his descendant." "Yes, my name is. My father was his grandson." Stared at the young woman for a long moment. She saw the same fire in her eyes that she had seen in the footage, the same quiet strength, the same unbreakable will. The bloodline lived on. Slowly, carefully, the queen lowered herself to one knee. It was a gesture she had never offered to any non in her entire life. Her advisors gasped in shock. The other humans looked confused, but understood. She stood and met the queen's eyes without fear. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I am showing respect," said. "Your ancestor saved more than his sister that day. He saved the idea that even the smallest flame can hold back the darkness. He showed my empire something we had forgotten." She rose back to her feet, slowly and painfully. Her old bones protested the movement. "We thought strength meant power. We thought courage meant having nothing to fear. Your great-grandfather taught us that true strength comes from love. True courage means being afraid and fighting anyway." Wiped the tears from her face. She smiled and for just a moment could see smile in her expression. "That is what humans do," said softly. "We hold the line. We protect the ones we love. We fight until the fighting is done." Nodded slowly. Yes, I understand that now. She turned to look at the armor one final time. The metal was old and worn. The cuts and burns had faded with time, but the story it told was as powerful as ever. When I first saw this armor, said, I was afraid. I thought humans were dangerous because they could not be controlled. I thought your love was a weakness that made you unpredictable. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Now I understand the truth. Your love is not a weakness. It is your greatest weapon. It makes you do things that should be impossible. It makes you fight when all hope is lost. It makes you hold gates against armies because someone behind you matters more than your own life. She looked at Minu, at all the humans in the delegation. The Empire has conquered 1,200 species. We have never been defeated. But if we ever went to war against humanity, we would lose. Not because you are stronger, not because you have better weapons, but because you would never stop fighting. You would burn us out of the galaxy one life at a time, and you would smile as you fell because your children would be safe. The hall was completely silent. Even the guards had stopped breathing. Smiled, a rare and strange expression on her alien face. So instead of fighting you, we will learn from you. We will study your stories. We will remember your heroes. And we will try to understand the force that makes humans unstoppable. She gestured toward the armor. This armor will stay here forever, not as a trophy but as a reminder that courage has no species, a reminder that love can defeat armies, a reminder that one person, standing alone against the darkness, can change the fate of worlds. Stepped forward and pressed her hand against the glass of the display case. She looked at the armor that had protected her great-grandfather. She imagined him standing on that wall, bleeding and broken, refusing to fall. Thank you, she whispered to the empty metal. Thank you for holding the line. Behind her, the delegation began to move toward the exit. The meetings would begin soon. There were treaties to sign and agreements to make. But stayed for one more moment, alone with the armor, alone with the legend. She thought about her great-grandfather's farm on New. She thought about her grandmother, who had lived a long and happy life because one man had refused to give up. She thought about all the children and great who existed because of his sacrifice. The line he had held was not just a gate, it was the future itself, and because he had held it, that future had become reality. Smiled through her tears. The legend lives on, she whispered, and it always will. She turned and walked away, leaving the armor to stand alone in its case. The lights dimmed as the hall emptied. Silence returned. But the armor did not seem alone. It seemed to be waiting for the next crisis, the next battle, the next moment when someone would need to remember that even one person could make a difference. The humans would face many challenges in the centuries to come. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, full of enemies that wanted them dead. But they would face those challenges the same way had faced the. They would hold the line. They would protect the ones they loved. And they would never, ever stop fighting. Because that is what humans do.